That's the problem with getting her to jump up on my knee twice. It's like she gets all silly. Oh no! What is with this, Twitch? Yo, Kodiak. Hold on, let me just check. My stream quality is good. 0 dropped frames on my end. Oh, but the stream is having problems. So, like, my internet is fine. Weird. Yeah, it's not on my end, guys. My stream quality on my end is looking good. But Twitch appears to have kicked me. Well, okay. Well, anyway, let us just refresh our brains. Make whatever weird noise you have to refresh your brain. And then we'll be back. Sometimes Twitch is just Twitch. Yeah, it's Twitch. There's not a better alternative, so we're all stuck. Yeah, you missed Doggo. You missed Doggo twice. And she was a dingo, so I had to exile her. So now I'm going to try to let her back in, and hopefully she won't be a dingo. Yeah, will you be a good girl? Okay, you can come in and you can sleep here, but you've got to settle down, okay? Settle down. Nope, work. We're trying to teach her that the orc noise from World of Warcraft, or from Warcraft 2, I think, is not it means it's not playtime. It's work time. Work. Good girl. Okay, yeah, we gotta do some weathering and finish that glove. So, that's right. Yeah, it's just, Now I see, I think that but, no, it is, because it's obvious that this is a glove, but I don't know if it's like a sculptor error or my error. But I'm just going to go with it. All right. So we need glove stuff. We need glove stuff. And we used, I believe, a bit of shield brown. Maybe desert sand. I was using black and brown for that, so I'm going to grab that. If I can find it. Where did I put you, black and brown? Oh, noes. There it is. It got shoved over. I gotta check and make sure that somebody is chewing on an appropriate item. Are you chewing on an appropriate item? Okay, that's appropriate. You're a good girl. You're back, Turgeon. I should have known because, I got good news this morning about writing stuff. And I should have known that Turgeon was back in orbit to, influence my luck that way. You're my luck. You're my good luck charm. No, I've been lining up promotions for East of the Sun for when West of the Moon releases, right? Because I want to get some new audience in. Right around the same time as the second book releases, so then they can be excited and read the first book and right away get to read the second, and help with sales numbers and Amazon rank and all that stuff, and visibility. So I applied for, one of these lists has a featured promotion. That's like double the cost of the main promotion, but still under $100, so I was like, all right. Only 1% of people get accepted who apply, and I got accepted this morning. So I get to be on their featured level, which pretty much gives me front and center individual promotion. Yeah. No, being stuck in Atlanta is not good thing. There is no such thing as a sculptor error. Hashtag not biased, green users. Aw, I've got a puppa right here beside me. That's a good puppa. Okay, so you got green because the orange you used had too much yellow in it. try using something like volcanic orange instead of something like sunrise orange. But the actual way to make really good browns in Ara is to use oxide red, which I think I've talked about on my, pretty sure I talked about that recently on a pigment PDF in my Patreon. So yeah, when you try to mix a brown from an orange and a black, and you get a green, it's because you have too much yellow in the mix. So the black and the yellow are interacting, and they are stronger than the other pigments. Especially if you're using just a bright orange, where the red is usually something like a naphthol or a pyrrole or something like that, where they're actually quite weak, unless there's a heavy load of it in there, which is why I say use more of a reddish orange. But yeah, no, what you really want is to mix some oxide red in there. Because it is very orange, and it makes beautiful, beautiful browns when mixed with black. Alrighty, let's see here. Yeah, that's right. I was mixing up my black and brown and stuff. This one, the sword hand has a glove, and it makes sense, right? And I thought it made sense, but then I looked at this. Now it doesn't make sense. Now it looks like both hands have gloves, but I don't care. I don't care, damn it. Maybe I'll just repaint that. Because the problem is that there's definitely a barrier here between the hand and the cuff. And so that made me think, okay, that's just a bare hand on the gun. And that's fine. It makes sense that the sword hand would have extra covering, so, you know, to protect it. So that made sense to me. But now I look at the front, and on the front on this one, yeah, I don't know. I'm just confused. So I'm just going to go with it. I think I'm just going to go with the glove on this hand and just do it. It's confusing to me, but it's also a mousling that was sculpted at a smaller size and blown up to a bigger size, and that can create artifacts and problems. So that's part of the problem. Papa, settle and chew. Yeah, good girl. You brought me your bully. That's really good. It's a really good girl. Can you settle and chew and not on my foot? Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. But it doesn't make sense necessarily with the sculpt. Like I was just noticing an extra detail in the sculpt, which made me doubt myself. The bottom line is, though, guys, whenever you have an instance like this, you can choose to just paint it one way or another. Kind of like, remember when we painted Sophie? I chose to do what Rhonda did, which was to paint her fingers as if they were just fingers and not actual metal gauntlets. In reality, the way these are sculpted, you could paint them either way, because there is texture there that supports them being a gauntlet, but it's so shallow that if you look at it, it can also just be knuckles. So you can choose, when you run into this, you can choose it. Just go with one. I chose it to go this way because it helps to bring that light flesh color around the model. And that's probably why Rhonda did it as well. Because otherwise, she's got very little skin on her, especially if you're just painting her as a warrior and you don't put the wings on. Yeah. Yeah, I thought I had a pretty good conviction on that marble, and then I doubted myself this morning. But yeah. So now I'm trying to figure out what other promotions I want to line up for East of the Sun. Because I kind of want to not book anything around that featured one to see how well it works. That's a problem if you want to have multiple promotions if you want to really pop a book up in it to visibility, but you also kind of tend to blur them together and you can't really tell how any one of them is doing if you do that. That's kind of what I did last time, because I ran a dual promotion with 2 different ones, but that meant that I didn't know which one of those services was actually pulling the weight, or if both of them were. So yeah, I'm kind of like, I'm stuck in that little kind of thinking, metagaming. I'm metagaming my release. But yeah, I don't know. I've got to book them soon because space fills up, but... Alright, so I'm going to get some shield brown ready and some desert sand. I could also, instead of that, I could grab driftwood, which is over here somewhere. driftwood. So any of these colors, or desert stone. But this makes a pretty good triad, actually. So if you want to not have the wood stain brown, and you want instead a lighter neutral beige brown triad, use driftwood as your mid, shield as your shadow, and desert sand as your highlight. And you can essentially... Awesome. Thank you, Turgeon. Yeah, I think my covers are really helping. So I am super happy. And soon I think in September we're designing the cover for North of the Wind. So I'm looking forward to that. I already gave her some parameters and picked out a model that I want the main character to look like. So it'll be fun. It's fun, guys. Cover design is like the best part. For me, it's the best part. Oh, 105. Wow, crazy. Yeah, that's crazy, Zachariah. Yeah, it'll be a while before because I'm not releasing North of the Wind until at earliest February. Like, because, you know, I at this point, I'm kind of planning about 6 months, 5 or 6 months between books. But I really don't know. Like, because this is a whole new world now, guys, a whole new world. Because, remember, I have these first 2 books, like, pretty much written, although I did rewrite a lot of West of the Moon, like, from scratch. But in general, it's been years since I sat down, wrote a book from start to finish, edited it, and now I've got to have it ready for publication, right? So I really don't know how long that process is going to take me. It's an adventure. It's an adventure. And I'm hoping it's not an adventure that will stress me out. I'm going to put just a little bit of black and brown down here, and then I'm going to mix in a little bit of shield brown to create the start of kind of a dirt mud color. I'm going to do three drops of shield brown and 1 drop of blackened. But yeah, so this is going to be a great test this fall. Like, and I'm still debating right now. I kind of need a break from the Bear Kings just a little bit because finishing West of the Moon was pretty intense. And I kind of want to write just something light and fluffy and then go back and write North of the Wind. But I'm kind of debating that because part of me also wants to get North of the Wind done sooner rather than later so I have enough time to edit. So I'm kind of debating. I'm still debating. All of this July month was I slated for no raw writing at all so that I could figure out what I was going to do and focus on getting West of the Moon ready. And that's the other thing, right? Is I don't know. Oops, wrong color. I reached for driftwood instead of shield. I was going to do shield mixed with desert sand. You want my romantic fantasy idea? That's going to be a while, Curtico. Because, like, when I get an idea, in that case, it was purely an idea for the magic system. So, like, what's gonna happen? Okay, this is how Queenmaker worked too. Like, this is how I ideate, guys. This is how I write. I get an idea. Maybe it's a magic system. Maybe sometimes it's a character. Sometimes it's just a really strong character that pops into my head with a concept, and she's like, I want to be written. You write me now, right? But then that character is just there. It's like that character, that magic system, that story idea, that villain just kind of sits in the back of my head. They're on the back burner. And every once in a while, they kind of float up and we think of it. And I come up with more details about them. If they're going to get written at all, they're going to come forward and I'm going to think of more details. And I start essentially tracking those, usually in just a voice-to-text file or if I've got enough, I sit down and mind map it. Like I mind map what I've got. But it takes a while because I'm somebody who has to like let it kind of percolate. It needs to percolate. It needs to brew. So it sits there and it percolates on my back burner until it's strong enough to like come to the front and have me actually like think about it. Like actually start, okay, do I have enough to plan this story? And at that point I do start mind mapping. And then I put it aside again. Because the mind map is just usually a basic plot outline with maybe some little subplots. Maybe a character, kind of a couple characters pop up here or there. But I put it away again. And then I think about it a little bit more. And then in another month or two, I get a whole nother round of ideas that pop up out of my subconscious mind. So don't worry. Yeah. Yeah, right. It's got to, and some people, many writers, I think, but people in general, a lot of us are this way. We need time to think about an idea. And the more we think about an idea, the better it gets until you hit a point. You definitely hit a point where you've got the story, and then maybe you're like, oh, but... And then it's just your fear holding you back, usually. It's just like your internal pressure, your fear of like letting it out because maybe it's not ready. So you got to get skilled at noticing that point. And it's the same thing with finishing a mini in some ways. You're working on it. You're like, oh, it looks pretty good. But then you're like, oh, but I don't know if it's done. And then you just kind of like put it off to the side and you don't actually finish it, right? So there's that internal resistance to, like, in this case, it's even in the creation process where because some mental states, like some of us, we want to be certain before we start, right? Before we start diving in and giving all that energy to a project, we want to be sure. And you can't be 100% sure. At some point, you've just got to kick your own butt and start the project. So, but yeah, the romantic fantasy... romantasy, as they call it. Since it would be my first foray into that genre, and really I don't read a lot of romantasy, and I don't read a lot of romance. I do read romance every once in a while, but for me, it's an exception, and it has to be a good story. Like, it has to be with some well-drawn characters, right? I don't like romance for romance's sake. Unlike a lot of people who read romance, really do just want romance for romance's sake, right? It's their great escape. They love it. They love watching their favorite archetypes, like, battle it out and get together in the end. But I don't read that way. So for me, it's like, it might end up being more of a urban fantasy than a paranormal romance. It might end up being more Ilona Andrews, less romantasy. Because I definitely think that although there is a heavy romance, like, plot in Ilona Andrews' stuff, it's not center stage, right? Her character's growth is center stage. And that's the kind of book I like to read. Like, that's what I prefer. No, that's totally efficient of you, Turgeon. Yeah, they're awesome. Husband and wife team, for those who don't know. Husband and wife writing team, writing urban fantasy. And sometimes they do technically call, I think one of their series they actually do call kind of paranormal romance. It's a fine line between the two, but it's really which plot line is the main, right? Is it the romance plot line, or is it the power plot line? Like the fantasy plot line. And I tend to prefer her books where the personal growth plot line is primary and the romance plot line is secondary. But not everybody does, so. You do it also, Kurtiko, that's funny. I'm going to get some of this water in here. So I'm doing mixes of Shield Brown and Desert Sand. I'm doing mixes of Shield Brown with a little bit of Black and Brown. I've got my Black and Brown because I want to keep the leather dark. So I'm popping that in there. But yeah, so essentially, and some writers try to accelerate this process, and they're able to, but for a lot of us, the test of whether we should actually write a book, because we get ideas, like, okay, I have ideation as a strength, so I idea all over the place. I can give you 5 ideas. If you set me up parameters, I'm like, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea. I have no problem with ideas. I never get writer's block, guys. I'm one of those people. Unless I'm in a section of the story and I can't see the plot going forward, then I get blocked, but it's temporary. Just going to put a little bit of desert sand in there. And maybe a little bit more of this. Is a little bit warmer. But yeah, so, but because I get so many ideas, They really have to like sit around in my head. Like, I don't know. I'd have to count the number of years. Let's see. Sure. It was at least, and don't be scared because it doesn't take this long anymore. I had a lot of stuff happening in my life. But I would say it was 15 years between the time I got the idea for East of the Sun and the time I actually wrote it. Like, seriously. And that was mostly because I was not prioritizing writing in my life at that time. I think this is a little bit... Okay, so I've got black and brown. And black and brown, you can see how warm that color is, right? How reddish. When I add that desert sand and a little bit of shield brown, it kind of washes out. And that's great, because this is a much better dirt color than this is. This is a little bit too rich. So when I'm doing weathering colors, I definitely start with this. Now, I am going to use this color to highlight this, though, as far as the glove goes. So we're kind of mixing up our weathering colors at the same time as we're mixing up our leather colors. Oh yeah, romantic urban fantasy with were-lions, vampires, and family that are undying, horrific warlords. It is all good stuff. Yes, anybody who hasn't read Ilona Andrews' books, you can start with Magic Strikes, I believe. No, Magic Strikes is Magic Strikes. Or no, it isn't. It's the first. The first one is no, maybe that is it. I think I brought it back into my thing. But yes, Kate Daniels, that series. That was her first series, and it's not my favorite, actually. It is not my favorite. Go ahead and ask it, Pendrake. Why not? I'm going to just do a little bit of more desert sand in and mix a little bit of this warmer color in to that, so I have a brighter highlight color. I'm just looking at the highlights that I did on the belt. And that's close, but I'm going to want a little bit lighter color. There we are. Now notice that the desert sand does have gray in it, so it does really mute out, it grays out this warmer color. The warmer color is coming from the driftwood, which has a fair amount of yellow in it, fair amount of ochre. Oh, magic. Yeah, I think you're right. You're right. Magic Bites and then Magic Strikes. You're right. The other one is in my bedroom, and the others are all stacked up on my bookshelf here. Yes, Pendrake only comes out of his corner here on the stream. We are blessed with his presence. Other people don't know how cool he is. So we should feel special to have Pendrake. But yeah, Pendrake, tell me what the thingy was, what Haldir's question was. I miss Haldir. Obviously, he does not do Twitch, but. Used to see it on forums all the time. It's true, Pendrake. You are cooler than you know. Everybody's cooler than they know. Everybody thinks they're not cool. Unless they're those kids that were cool in high school who are no longer cool, but they still think they're cool. If you're one of those, apologies. Alrighty, got a little bit, just want a little bit of highlight here. Trying to just get, okay, that's what that is. The hand is kind of clunky. Oh, how there works nights and sleep days. That makes sense. That would make sense as to why they're not on our stream. That's fine. Not everybody has to be here. Yes, but to other nerds, geeks, and dog people, Dogfather, you are cool. Everybody's got their own subset of like cool that they fit into. You need to allow yourself to be a cool person to somebody. To somebody in your life, you are totally cool. Even if that person is yourself. Uh-oh. What are you up to, Papa? Do I have to exile you again? One moment. Must investigate Papa. Oh, Kiki Pix. Yeah, everybody falls in love with the Keekster, unless they lived with her and saw how nasty she could be. Oh, okay, you're good. Okay, what are you doing, Bubs? What are you doing, huh? Are you being okay? I'm just gonna close that door. That's fine. What are you up to? You doing okay? Was that an outside noise that made me think you were not being a good girl? She's like, I'm a very good girl, Mama. You left both your bully sticks in here, pup. Oh, you're just gonna hang out? Okay. Nope, she's being a good girl. I just accidentally left David the hobby room door open, and sometimes she likes to. David's got a kneeling chair that has wood, that's wooden framed, and the knobs on it she loves to chew on ever since she was a baby. It depends on your definition of cool. Oh wait, I've got Pendrake's question. Alrighty, righty. If Reaper was going to do big 2-ounce jars, what colors would you pick? Oh yeah. Yeah, get the 2 ounce of Volcano Brown because they'll just cancel it again. Oops, that might my inner cynic. Is it? Ah. People geekier than us. That's funny. Oh, I need some brown liner too because I need the line between the fingers on this glove. Pure white for sure. I go back and forth on walnut, between walnut and brown liner, but I think I would like a big bottle of brown liner. I mean, pretty much you pick the colors that you go through a lot, right? I even would go with blue liner these days. I'm going to go and plop my brown liner here and get those fingers lined around this glove. I did put in my Reaper order. So we will have we're going to have a Halloween mini in summer. So I can finish it, hopefully. I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish it. I hope I can finish it. We might have to focus right before ReaperCon and get it done. But I ordered what I said I was going to. I'm not going to talk because Julie's in stream and so is Bob. It's a secret. It won't be a secret for long. But, you know. But suffice to say, we will be painting a Bob Rodolphe figure. And it's a secret. Halloween forever. We were going to do that, actually, Pendrake. We were going to do that. At one time, Ed really was exploring that. Bob's out of the room right now. All right, Julie, I'm painting a mini for Bob. Shh, because you've got the Sphinx. Don't tell him. We'll just like, you know, pretend we're just painting it for Ron, okay? All right, I wanted to get really strong. Got to leave the brown liner really strong, so that I can. Otherwise, it's just really not going to affect that any. Yeah, that's why he brought it up, I'm sure, Pendrake. Hey, Fancy, sup? Oh yeah, yeah. I'll paint one of those. Since I did an order, I do get one of the Honeythorn, the Warrior, the Lancer, or whatever one they send me as a freebie. So I'll paint the bee. I'll paint a bee on stream. We'll pop that one in for sure. Because they're cute. And we don't paint enough Weeby on this stream. I tend to be strongly biased toward the Julie Guthrie, Bobby Jackson universe. There. Sweet. So we got that lining. Now those fingers will show up better. Hello, haunted. Wait, oh, it's so haunted holler. Hello. Yeah, we're working on our big fun-size Mousling today. I haven't seen you before, Haunted. So normally we're painting stuff that's a little bit more in scale for 28 mil. We were just doing our freehand on this one the other day. But I paint all Reaper on this stream. This is a Reaper stream. So normally it's 28. This guy's a little bit bigger. He's a fun-size Mousling, so he's bigger than a normal Mousling. Yeah, okay, good. Good. That's excellent news, Julie. Thank you. Yeah, that's good, Zechariah. Yeah, more love to the weebies. More love to the weebie. All right, so now let's go on the back here and get the highlights on the back side of this glove. But yeah, Pendrake, to go back to your question, yes, we did seriously look at it. I mean, Ed seriously considered a lot of different things, right? You have to like be looking at different ways to position your paint line. I think the reason maybe that we never did it was, one, he couldn't find a bottle that he really thought worked for it. And two, because MSP is made with pretty high-end ingredients, bigger bottles would cost like maybe too much for people who are used to, like, because usually if you want a big bottle, you're trying to use it for terrain or you're trying to use it for, you know, things like that. Maybe if you're us, maybe you do want a huge bottle of pure white because you just use pure white a lot. But there's very few colors that fall into that category, right? And so I think it just wasn't, he decided there wasn't really a market for it. And Ed was really good at spotting market potential in general. So it just like, there was an idea that never really went anywhere because of those things. And then how do you market it, right? You need enough colors in it to build a display for a store, because it won't fit on your standard rack, right? So there's another thing, that's another cost that comes in, is that it won't fit on your standard rack. So how are you going to market it? Will it fit in a blister? Is it really make sense to market it in a blister, right? All these things that people are like, oh yeah, I would like that, and they just don't think about all of the logistics behind it, right? The business logistics. So it just wasn't really a good idea, a good fit for a Master Series, I think, and so we never really went through with it. Like, and doing it as a boutique thing doesn't make sense, because if you can't flip volume, then you're just kind of making a bunch of bottles that are going to sit on the shelf until the few people who want them buy them. And you can't market it to stores or distribution. You know, can you see the problem? So, yeah. I think, pretty sure that's why it didn't really go anywhere. Many reasons, as you can see. So we're just going to get a little bit of highlight going on up here. Grab my black and brown, and this hand is kind of turned, so a lot of the light only falls on the upper part here. Yeah, but again, then what colors are you going to put out? We already have line creep problems, so it's really hard when you're thinking about doing this sort of thing to like come up with an intro line that makes sense, that will move for a lot of people, right? Like, sure, you could say, okay, dragon red, because red dragons, and we put out like big dragons that people might want to paint red, but in reality, maybe dragon red isn't the starting color for a lot of those people, right? Maybe they use a different red. And so they're not going to, even though they paint red dragons, they're not going to pick up that bottle of that particular red. Because it's just not the one they use, right? So that's why I say it's very hard, because when you've got so many options, you do spread out your customer base does, you know, choose all sorts of different ones, which is great and all, but it means that trying to target a product for a overlarge bottle becomes a little problematic. We went away from that a long time ago, Pendrake. We do not have, like, okay, our equipment for that is like big ketchup bottles. Like, seriously, it's very bad. It wastes product and it's slow. So the answer would really be effectively no. You wouldn't do that. You'd have to price it. It takes so much manual labor, and it wastes product. Right, but then it's pure white, pure black, blood red. Brown liner. Walnut. You know, like, there's your 5. There's your top 5. Some of the metallics. Throw in probably antique gold. And I'm trying to think of the other top 10 colors. But, like, for a long time, and now that we've got more blacks and more whites, then, you know, maybe more than one black shows up. Well, no, exactly. A new bigger bottle, we can't do it in Audrey. It doesn't work. And that would mean a lot of extra expense for not a lot of money. It probably wouldn't pay for itself. Not for a very, 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 very long time, if ever. Because those parts ain't cheap, folks. When you're talking about a machine that was more than $100,000 to build, it's not like you can just spit out a new bottle chute assembly. A retrofit is very, very expensive. And for a product that, again, is very hard to nail, you know, supplies on. I mean, a lot of people probably would buy bigger bottles of pure white and pure black. Maybe they would buy brush-on sealer and flow improver. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. I mean, that's it. That's exactly why that was the option instead, right? You can order 10 of a color. If you really are gonna, if you're painting a Dragonkin army and you want to do them in red and you want, you know, 10 bottles of Asmodeus Red, you can do that. I mean, it will cost you more rather than less, right? That's the thing. It's like, hypothetically, a bigger bottle should cost less because the bottle is not going to be equivalent to paying for, like, 3 bottles of normal size, right? You should be able to drop a little bit of cost off of that. But yeah, it's a hard, logistically, it's a hard sell to see how it would make the money back given, as Pendrake points out, a retrofit for a very expensive machine. They're the common sense one, Pendrake. Those are the common sense colors. All dragons should be red now. I don't know. I have a fondness for green dragons, forest dragons. I totally do. That's probably my second favorite color to paint a dragon. All right, so we've got a highlight on the glove. Now let's get to weathering. So now we're going to go to, for my leather colors, I was using these two. I'm going to use my muddy color here and this kind of dusty color here. I'm going to add a little bit more water to them because I want to be able to stipple them and build up layers. Because, you know, when dust and dirt build up on something, they build up in layers. So we're going to start, and you can do it, the way that your brain will tell you to do it is to start the dark and work to the light, but that's actually not true. Because if you think about it, the thin layers of weathering are going to be dry, and so they're going to be that dust color, not the mud color. So really, the darker color goes at the edge, which might still be a little damp or wet, or thicker, you know, because the thicker dirt is going to be darker colored. Unless it's fully dried and caked on, but you got to find a way to exemplify. And then maybe then you just build up more of this, right? You have to figure out what you're trying to do. So I'm going to mix in that water that I just put into this color. I want it to be thin enough that I can build it up in layers. Maybe I put a little bit more brown in it. That's good. Make a good dusty dirt color. Dried dust. All right, so I want to get the edge of this, since I already dirtied up the shirt a lot, I want to get the edges of this. And if you use more of a gray color for this, you can make it look like the cloth is just fading, which is cool, instead of just having dust build up. So you can choose what you're going to do. So when I take this and I pull it over the palette, it's very thin, see it? It's really layering consistency at this point. So I'm going to just start stippling it around the edge. And I want it to be irregular. Some of it will pick up on the bottom of that pocket as well. So I don't want to keep it all like always the same width. I want to vary it a little bit, make it irregular. Yeah, add light gray. Or actually what I really like to do is add a mixture of driftwood and gray, depending, because you could use desert sand instead. Any of these colors plus gray. I mean, yeah, just look at, I mean, you know that red fades to pink and orange tends to fade to like a coral color or a very pale, like pastel orange. So just, you want to not just add white because you need to actually like fade the vibrancy of the pigment. So you're muting it. Yeah, I think it's a glove, but it's just, they're just what they are. I'm not going to worry about it anymore, Pendrake. But yeah, I mean, you can always look up online. You can do a Google search on faded orange shirt or faded red something coat, whatever. Build this up. But you can see how that changes the color slightly. It greens it out a little bit, but that's fine. I'm going to also do it up here on this top part. You don't need a lot. Even just a little bit is going to give you that appearance that you want. The faded out appearance. But I definitely use the stippling on this. So all the edges, essentially. This is a really beat up jacket. And I'm gonna pop a little bit on all the edges where the cloth sticks out and would get worn. But mostly building it up here. If I do want it to be a bit more brown, I will have to use a slightly darker color that has more of the brown pigment, less of the white and gray pigment in it. But yeah, now that I think a Reaper, you'll see Reaper pivoting on the paint lines, and less will be more heading out soon. So again, go out and buy the colors you like. And it's smart. I mean, if you want to get your paint lines into stores, you have to make them a manageable size. Otherwise, there's just some colors that will never get picked up. Not because they're bad colors, but just because there's too many colors. So I would personally like to see Reaper go, like if I was designing a paint line nowadays, I would go with fewer colors, released in a kind of a logical sequence as far as, you know, like usability goes, instead of just kind of like putting out X new colors every whatever. And once you have a solid base of 100 or 108 or whatever colors, then all of your future marketing goes into teaching people how to use them, right? Like education on why this blue is really cool and useful, right? Like we have the social media now, so I feel like we could do that. Yeah, I mean, exactly, Inara, right? Like, I kind of feel like the problem is that, and I always felt like this was something Ed and I disagreed on. Ed felt that paints needed to be like miniatures, where you periodically canceled the weak sellers to make room for more miniatures or more paints, right? More colors. And I felt strongly that the answer was to put out a very strong color line in a finite number of colors, and then educate people about, you know, what these colors are useful for, and put out specialized sets that helped them to use the colors for different things. So essentially, you know, outreach of usage and lots of videos, like GW, I hate to say this, but like GW did, right, with Duncan. They just were always doing like videos on how to paint this model with these paints and these colors, and why these colors are really useful for this, right, and how cool they looked on this model. And I mean, Games Workshop has a fairly large paint line now because they have the contrast paints on top of everything else, but they didn't always. They used to have just 60 colors. For the longest time, that's all they had. And it worked. It was fine. They sold, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I still like promo colors. I still like the idea of promo colors. We always have the formula. You know, as long as the formula's been saved, we always have it. It's not like we can't make more at some point as a fun promo. Like, I do like promo paint colors sometimes, but... And with the whole, you know, if you want 10 bottles, you can order it. That's, I mean, that's the solution right there, right? I'm going to do our little stipples here. We won't ever do that, Pendrake, or at least, okay, when Ed was around, we wouldn't ever do that. Distribution really screams if you try to do that. And I don't know how much, what percentage of our sales are from distribution. But you don't do that because essentially you deeply offend your supplier by doing that. Like you do not make friends by doing that. It isn't just easy and you just say, oh, but this is just the way we're doing it, because you have people out there who are working in distribution and making their living, you know, from carrying all of these things under one roof, and then you tell them, oh, our hot new thing, sorry, you can't have it. Essentially, you're telling them, you know, well, we'd much rather operate without you, distributor, right? That's the message you're sending. So it isn't so easy. No, the hat is its own beast, really. Stippling is always going to give you a different effect than this. That's why this is its own technique. I mean, I don't know where I put Lumberjack Dude. Dude, where'd I put you? Dude! Dude! Dude might be over here still. Dude, are you here? I think Dude is here. Like, essentially poly, brush stroke is key for textures. And so there are some brush strokes that are just not really executable on a smaller surface. So like if you go down to a hat that's the normal size for a 28, the problem, and okay, you could if you were Darren Hahn, if you had such fine brush strokes that you could essentially shrink this to scale, you could do it. I won't say it's impossible because there's a dude out there that can do it. But can you do it without a ton of practice and like becoming pretty much a virtuoso with really thin paint and really small thin lines? Very difficult. Because when you stipple, you're not creating the same brush stroke, and so you won't get the same effect, right? Like that leather technique is very, very specifically created by overlapping lines, not dots. And when you do dots, you get a different effect. So you do stippling on leather to show worn edges, to show a suede finish, and on fabric to do wool, right? So the dude that, you know, this is the box art. Stippling is used on the wool, on that. But the leather is done with the overlapping lines. So hold on, let me get my dude out so you can see it more. Me dude. Okay, so the stippling is the wool. But you can very much see that the lines, it's the buildup of lines. Now, could you reverse engineer this and just paint this kind of design on without all the lines? If you were good at randomizing patterns, you could. Like, if I'm looking at this and I decide I don't want to do all the wiggle lines, I just want to get to this step fast, yeah, at this point, I could reverse engineer this. And I did use a little stippling close to the top here. When it comes to doubling down on the texture up here, this part right here is stippled. So, yes, lesser dude and dude. I do like my skin tones better than his. At least on his dude. I like my dude a bit better. My dude looks like he might turn into a wolf at odd moments. You know, he kind of has that shifter look about him, that werewolf look. Just my opinion. HM Road Dog with the resub for the Prime for the 42 months. Thank you. But yeah, so could you, like, in the bunchy parts, I do use stippling to accentuate the highlights. But otherwise, that texture, that streaky texture, is very dependent on brushstroke. Like, that's why different brushstrokes, like, that's how you make textures, is with different brushstrokes. That's what painting textures is. And so if you limit yourself to just stippling, which you do have to do on some very small areas, you won't be able to get that effect. He kinda, I still feel like he's a werewolf, but that's just me. It's my werewolf fixation, obviously. Sadly, most shifter romance is just badly written, or I might get into it. But anyway, blah, blah, blah. There we go. So, but yeah, so for caking on dust and mud, it makes sense that, because it's globs, right? It's globs of dirt that are adhering, or particles of dirt that are adhering, so a dot and a blotch pattern makes sense. Bruce Campbell version of a paladin werewolf? That sounds like a character. A paladin with an axe. That also sounds like a character. Maybe I should do an axe paladin. I'm slowly brainstorming romantic interests for my Queenmaker series. Because there is romance in that. Like, there isn't a lot of romance, like, in East of the Sun, West of the Moon. It's definitely an adventure story, although it has a little bit. But Queenmaker actually does have a bit more in it. And I really need to find titles for those books. I keep thinking about it. It's just like Queenmaker 1, Queenmaker 2, Queenmaker 3, Queenmaker 4. I'm like, no. At some point, I will get it. At some point, my brain will come up with the actual working titles for those books. Yes, I'm going to have to remember, like, the Bruce Campbell Paladin Werewolf thing. Sometime. Maybe it's time, when it's time for the paranormal romance or the urban fantasy. Maybe I'll have to make the paladin werewolf with an axe character. Because, you know, why use a sword when you can use an axe? He'd be a very direct personality. Yes, and that very silly movie was based on a very silly book, Pendrake. But you know what? It's still kind of cool. It's cool that someone not only thought of that idea, but had the nerve to write it, and to write it decently enough that it's actually entertaining. That's when ludicrous can work. Like, we all love silly things. Like, some little part of us enjoys silly. In my case, a very large part of me enjoys silly, so yay, you're helping. Yeah, it's actually, we're getting a break here today. Today it's only supposed to be 79. So we're getting a little bit of cooler weather here, which I'm very much enjoying. Don't have to shut up the house today. And it's good because tonight is CrossFit, so I'll be working out in the heat. Or in this case, in the not so heat. So really just stippling, almost stippling on a highlight, a textured highlight onto this coat, which has faded it a bit. As you can see, we've lost some of our blue on the front where we've got a lot of weathering, but now he looks very beaten and battered, right? Now, the one thing I do need to do is I need to come up on the rim of this hat, because the rim of the hat is still just dark. I don't mind if the underside is dark, but I really do need to put some texture around the edge, so I'm going to do that. Yes, silly, Pendrake. Very silly. And yet, everyone enjoyed it. Okay, not everyone. But a fair number of people enjoyed it. Enough people picked it up for it to be made into a movie. So. Alright, so let's go back to our leather color here. And I think I want to make kind of a half and half mix. I don't want this to be quite so light. There we go. So I'm making kind of a mocha color This plus this equals mocha. And then we'll start with that, and then we'll do some extra highlights with that. And I'm going to do vertical slashes on this to show the cracking edge, because there's definitely, like, there's notches taken out of this hat, right? And it's leather. So it's going to totally have a cracked edge. I have way too much to do today, and I'm thinking about cutting down on my to-do list so that I can relax a little more. So I just want to put just a bit of highlight here and there. And I'm just going to do streaks. Just so it's irregular, you can see those. Because I don't want it to be too distracting, but I want to have a cracked leather look going around the rim of that hat, so. Oh, yeah, the humidity. Ugh. I haven't looked at the humidity here to see if it's out of bounds. It feels like it's humid here. What do we got? %. That's about average. So my goldfinches have voted, Kerniko. Like, I went out to sweep up I don't use I still have a bunch of black oil sunflower seeds in seed husks, so I haven't gotten the hulled ones yet. So there's still a waste from my bird feeder. So I went out to sweep it all up, and a ton of the thistle seed had also landed on the ground. So I'm giving the goldfinches a combo of thistle and sunflower chips, and it is obvious that they are voting for the sunflower chips. Go figure. I thought they'd eat a bit of the thistle seed, but it's like a lot of it is on the ground. So I'm like, are they just totally picking through the thistle seed to get to the sunflower chips? They might be. They are on that feeder, like, all the time. So next time I may have to just get the sunflower chips and not the combo bag. Like, we always think variety is better, but birds appear to believe that variety is not good and we should just give them 24/7 sunflower seeds all the time. Birds are weird. That's why you don't buy thistle anymore? Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting there. And they had you could get bags of just thistle, you could get bags of the mix, or you could get bags of just sunflower chips at my bird store. So I got the mixed bag, and now I'm learning. So yeah. Those little birds, all they want is sunflower seeds. Like, it's like tuna with cats. It's like they're addicted. All right, so we've got just kind of, you can see that the rim now is not disappearing. It actually has some texture on it, and now we'll go back with some highlights and bring that in more. And then we're going to talk bases. But yeah, so I think I'm going to be in your boat after this, after I go through this bag. Because I do have to go through the rest of the bag. I've gone through about half of it. And I'm just going to do a couple of little stripes here and there, just to make an irregular edge. Birds are dinosaurs, yes. Well, apparently their dinosaurs would have been addicted to sunflower seeds. Yeah. Well, for the thistle feeder, I've got to use the chips, so. But yeah, I'm almost done with my shelled black oil sunflower seeds. And then I'm going to start, I've got a bag of hearts and chips that I'll just start mixing in instead. But I do want to go through the rest of my seed before I just switch all the way over. Those birds, they have to eat it. And at least the nuthatches seem to like the peanuts. Like, this little pygmy nuthatch, he's so adorable. He just, like, he wants those big peanut pieces, and he likes to sit with them between his toes and peck at them, and inevitably he will drop them because they are so big. And then he will be very sad because he doesn't want to pick them up off the ground, and he doesn't, because he's not a ground feeding bird. So then he has to leave them, and then some mouse gets it. But yes, from all evidence that I have seen, Pendrake, from my totally anecdotal evidence, dinosaurs would have been very addicted to sunflower seeds if they are birds. Just little bits of highlight, just to put something on there. But yes, I'm sure all experienced birders are like you, Korniko, and you're just like, don't bother buying anything other than sunflower seeds. Now I know. But I'll wean them gradually, so I can still use my other seeds. Plus, honestly, some of the smaller seeds from my mixed seed mix, the Juncos eat because they're ground feeders. They never go up on the feeder. All right, so there we go. We've got a hat, we've got a mouse, we've got a fairly weathered up mouse. Kind of missed that part on his shoulder. I'm going to get that. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get woodpeckers. I only have one thing that they would like, which is the suet with the mealworms in it. And so far they haven't found me, although I have heard them in our neighborhood before. So maybe I just won't get them. Though I'll keep offering the suet because Nuthatch likes it. And nuthatches are my favorites. All right, so there we go. We're going to get the cuff a little bit here. Just want to be consistent. Consistent with a little bit of weathering. There we are. Okay, we look nicely dirtied up. We have highlighted everything. Grr, grr, says Mouse. Oh, they like the peanuts, huh? Oh, and yours won't even eat the sunflowers with shell on. Yeah, I need to go through the rest of mine, so I'm not spoiling mine yet, but I'll get there. Yeah, I have a seed and nut mix that's hulled. That is like a no-waste mix, and that has the peanuts in it. My little nuthatches love them. All right, super. It's funny that the tiniest bird wants the biggest nut. Alrighty, let us talk basic. Boing. Here we are. I'm actually pretty happy with my mix of birds on my feeders now. Although, like I said, my titmouses stopped showing up, or at least I haven't seen them. Which is sad, because I like them. But they get bullied by the house wrens, so maybe they just gave up the ghost and went to a less populated feeding spot. Ah, there we go. So I glued him in, if you recall, very, very lightly so that I could get him out and make a different base for him. But now I have to get this base off of the gooey tack. There we go. That came off nicely. So what we have here is really just some sculpted grass with a sculpted, broken tile, stone thing, which is really, really easy to create ourselves. We need to figure out what size of base is going to do on this guy. This was very small, and I wasn't like a big fan of it because there's not much to it. Not a lot of room to do any scenery for sure. So if we went small, I have 3 bases here that I have, and they're all Reaper bases, I believe. Yeah. So we have the 7433, the 74048, and the 74030. So these are all of our choices. As you can see, they steadily increase in size. The one that I have right here is a 28, I think. Yeah, roughly. And this one is a 40. And this one's like a 45. They're different. They're probably technically about, they're probably both 40s if I measure the inner part of it. Almost. Yeah, this is kind of a 40. Like, it's kind of a 40. But this is a 40 of a different style, so. Although actually, no, it isn't. I mean, only if I do rim to rim. I guess if I do the inside, it's 32 or 33. So yeah, so these are scaling up. And they're different styles, right? So you have to decide what kind of edge you want on it. Obviously, if I use the slotta base one, I'm going to have to close up that slotta. So what I really do is kind of like, I know that I don't want to raise him way up, right? I don't want to do a real elevated base, I think, with him. So I want to kind of look at him with just maybe one level of cork. Maybe I'll do 2 levels of cork. But I want to see how he looks on these different bases. And I kind of also wanted to do one of these tombstones to give him a little set more ambience. So if I don't do a scenic base, then this 32 mil is about right for him. It's much bigger than that. It's going to give him more stability. If I raise him up a little bit, he fits well on it. He looks dynamic. It's not big and flat. If I go for bigger and flatter, he's going to look a lot less exciting, like he's going to be just stuck on the middle of this big pie plate. In order to make this work, I must put in more scenery. So if I go up to either of these bases, this is just way too much. There's so much room that you could even do a diorama on this space if you built out some, like a higher area and a lower area. You could totally have a diorama on something like this. So anything over 40 for a single figure, unless it's a monster, tends to be a bit much. I'm kind of these bases, the 74048. I really love these. You guys have noticed maybe that I use them a lot because as Reaper's models get bigger, they're just these are just so nice to build a base onto for a single model, right? Like this dude, like this is exactly the base that we've used for this one. We use the same for this one. We use the same. We did a bigger one for Kitty. We did a smaller one for the Necromancer because she's so tiny. If we look at all the stuff that we've done, the only time I went to the bigger base is when I had a diorama that I wanted to do, right? So that's kind of where we look at here as what I'm looking at as far as what I'm doing and the base sizing that I'm looking for. But every time I'm going for when I've got a very diminutive or small figure, I'm going that way. I'm going with a smaller base. Otherwise, with these bigger, chonkier figures or figures with a wide stance, I'm going that moderate size. I also went with Sophie, even though she's got the wings. For her, I wanted a little more dynamic base, and we also had that pre-built base with just a bunch of rubble on it. So I went smaller with her as well. So decide, it's really how much scenery and how big the model is going to determine how you're going to go. But anything with a really wide stance, and that totally is Mr. Mousling here, or a big chonky mini like this dude, which also is the Mousling. So wide stance on her. I need to reglue her foot. And then, yeah, so bigger, wider stance minis. Go for the wider base. All right, let's get these guys put back. There. But like when I put a base on Tiny Mousling, I'm going to go with a smaller base. So, for that reason. So I think we want to go here, but if I do want to put in this, you can see if I want to put in the tombstone, it's not going to work on here. If I want to put in the tombstone, I've got to go to the bigger base. And I've got to think of a composition that works. Because I feel like He could be stepping around it, but that doesn't really work. Maybe the tombstone isn't going to work after all, is what I'm coming down to. I'm feeling like the tombstone's too big. If I had a smaller tombstone, I can make it work, but I'm not, it's just too much. Because he's got his weapons so wide, it's just not going to work very well. So sometimes you have to toss out your idea when you think, hey, I want to do that. But I do want to do him stepping up. So I want to use this thin coaster cork and build a couple of steps out of it to go on this base. Kind of with the same thought here, I'll be taking the pegs off the bottom of his boots and pinning him into it instead. So let's see here. So I do have kind of a curve here that I had from a previous base, and I could repeat that curve if I wanted to. And I could even use my base as kind of a pattern if I wanted to as well. Or I could just knife it. Where is my tiny knife pad? There it is. So one thing I can also do is I can put my base directly over the top of this and cut around it so that I make sure that I have what I'm looking for. And if I want that cut out there, I'll just keep it there. I can hold on. I can either draw on the cork, or I can just cut around it and hold it in place. And really, you don't even need to like go all the way through it. You can always trim it up. You can break it off after a bit. You don't need to like go all the way through the bottom. I'm going to turn it. Turn the cork while you're pressing down on the base. I might need to dig up more of this cork too if I'm going to do a couple of layers. All right, so now I've got kind of this bit, and if I do it this way, I'm going to get a crumbling edge, which is great for ruined stone. And I can accentuate that by pulling it away more with the knife after I've got it. And I can make broken pieces at the top by using the knife tip. And I use the knife tip a lot because I can get a little finer sometimes with the areas that I cut away. I'm not just pulling out big lumps, I can also pull out small lumps. I mean, it is already, but it's just too big. It has too big of a footprint, sagebrush. So if I was going to, I would reach for a smaller tombstone, but I don't actually have like Reaper's Tombstone Pack. Probably should get some of that. Halloween is coming. But yeah, if I don't have it to hand right now, I'm not going to use it. I could also sculpt a tombstone if I wanted to. Use a little bit of styrene. I also need to cut that part. So I can do a double tiered thing. If I do that, I can also do that. So I think I want to do kind of figure it out here. But just mess around with it. There we go. And I like that. Or I can do this, make the back side more crumbly, make the front side more like that. Okay, I'm stepping up. That actually is cool because this is a much bigger step, or a slightly bigger step, than this is. So I can actually make him actually tilt it up a little bit more Let me get his foot snipped off. Snipping the tab off that foot with a side cutter.